Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we've got an interesting one. I've got here the Gamo Lethal lead-free hunting pellets. Now these are touted as being an eco-friendly version. They have a plastic body with a copper-coated alloy tip. Now the tip of those is actually magnetic, so it's obviously got some sort of steel or iron content in there. We've got some pretty bold claims here, 38% more accurate. Well, we'll find out shortly. I shot these the other day. It was a beautiful day. There was barely a breath of wind and the sun was out. It was lovely, so really good conditions for testing. But what I will say is, of everything I've ever shot through a sub-12 air rifle, the penetration from these was absolutely incredible. The actual tip itself, once it hits that lead lining, actually detaches from the skirt itself and punched clean holes through that 6mm lead sheet that's in the back of the pellet trap. So quite interesting. There's an awful lot to talk about when we get back as well, about the eco-friendly side of these things, being as they're plastic especially. So I'm going to get straight up the farm, get the targets out, and I'll catch up with you at the end because we've got an awful lot to talk about, especially with the long-term effects of running these lead-free pellets. So I'll see you at the farm. Right guys, we're here. It's absolutely beautiful out. It's about 13 degrees at the moment and there's barely a breath of wind as well. Got the standard A4 target card there, just with a little cross in the middle. The first few shots are simply just going to be to make sure they're safe enough and they actually hit the target box itself. I've also got a slightly bigger backstop around them just in case. Some of the other unusual pellets that we've tried sometimes struggle to even hit an A4 card, so don't know what these are going to be like yet. So I've just got the target out here. 25 yards, bigger backstop board around the actual target box, and then you can see further down the back as well there's an even larger board, so just to be on the safe side. Be interesting to see how these run. They certainly look interesting. I certainly like the idea of a hybrid pellet like this. I'm really not too keen that they're not a biodegradable plastic of some description, but first and most important thing really is, are they accurate enough to actually use for pest control? So let's find out. Right, so the GoPro's not on at the moment. I don't want to risk putting that anywhere near the line of fire for the moment until we've established that they actually go roughly where we want them to. The barrel and the setup is still zeroed for the JSBs from the other day, so we should hopefully be somewhere near a zero. I have given the barrel a really good pull through. Now, of course, in the long term, if we are having to use lead-free pellets going forward, of course, there won't be any remnants of lead in your barrel, so I've given it a really good clean. Because they're plastic, I can't imagine that they're going to need any lead in, of course. So we'll see really. I've got a 5 in here for the moment. Let's just make sure that they actually hit the card. A couple of extra backboards around it just to be on the safe side. So got the target real low to the ground as well, so there's very little chance that it's going to skew off and do anything a bit mental. If anything, it's likely to come in and hit the sand. So let's see how they go. Right, it's the first one that I'll have loaded. It felt quite smooth loading. Will it actually leave the barrel? Right, focus is set at 25. I'm still on 25 mag, which is a bit obscene, but it's quite nice. Let's see if we can just pop it straight down the center of the target. Okay, that's pretty good. That's almost bang on the center line. That's just probably half a pellet's width to the left, and it's also about 1/3 of a mil dot up, which of course, given that they're only under 6 grains, they're going to obviously be slightly more elevated by this point than a lead pellet would do. So okay, well at least we hit the card. Let's get a couple more through. Interestingly, they've all got little numbers on the back of them. Each of the plastic mouldings has a number. Now this one's a number 4. I wonder if it means that we need to sort through these and sort them all by number. I don't know, but we'll run a few through and we'll see how it pans out. I'll get some nice pictures of those when we get home. I'll be honest, that does feel quite nice loading in the barrel. So the 2 of those have felt fairly consistent loading so far. Right, well the 2 of those are touching. That one's coming almost perfectly on the centre line, so just a pellet's width to the right of the other one actually touching. That's surprising. Okay. Well, that's the target I've just pulled in. So them 2, of course, as you're looking at it this way, this was what I was aiming at. So they've come in, what's that, about 8-9 mil above my crosshair here. Now, of course, because these are plastic, they're only 2/3 of the weight. They're obviously not dropping as much as a lead pellet would be, but the fact that the 2 of those are basically touching pretty much on the same upright. Got a card here with some small crosses on, so these are about 18 mil across, 3/4 of an inch going down to sort of 10 mil and a few dots. What I'm going to do is start this way, try and bring it back to a close to zero as I can, and then see if we can take those out. But I'll be honest, I'm quite surprised so far. That's a lot better than I was anticipating. I thought these were going to be like them other gold plated ones, so still really not quite happy about them being plastic coated or plastic sheathed, but that's pretty good to start with. Right, let's get them swapped over. Right, GoPro's on down the end. I feel a bit more confident leaving that closer to the target card. To be honest, the first two of those, they've done a lot better than I thought they were going to. I was expecting these to be another one of them comedy pellets. Power's going to be down, but the speed's going to be well up. You can hear them crack as they go down there. Okay, so that one came in, same sort of elevation. I've just made a scope adjustment now. Interesting. Moved the scope and point of impact still crept up. Right. Oh, that one's dropped 2 mil dots now. Almost exactly 2 mil dots. Right, well, I'll take another shot at that same aim point then and see what happens there. I don't know how them first two, maybe there was still some remnants of lead in there. Wow, okay. So as we've run a few more through, they seem to be going all over the place a bit now. What? How do the first two go absolutely perfect and then they start skewing off everywhere? Right, that's a number 13. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if all our pellets were numbered like this for batch testing and sorting? So they've got a little tiny number 13. The two of those are number 13s. Right, so this will be the bottom right cross on the card. Right, so this is another number 13. Right, and that's gone almost a full mil dot up. Okay, let's run a few more through it. I'll carry on and we'll hopefully get something of a group established. I think what we do need to do when we get back, we need to take the barrel out, draw a pull through that and see whether or not there's any remnants being deposited in there of the plastic or anything like that, because them first two, as you've seen, I was really quite surprised by those, and now they're everywhere. So we'll carry on, see if we can actually get anything near a target. Oh, maybe they are a comedy pellet after all. How does that happen? That's gone straight through. Right, so that one's gone straight through that crosshair on the bottom right target. I think that's probably more luck than judgment at this point. Well, that's fairly close to the last one. There's probably a whole pellet strike gap between the two of those. Wow, okay, pup. I'm a little bit baffled now. Them first couple went through beautifully, considering. Swap the card over and they're absolutely all over the place. We'll run some out to 45. I've got some backstop material here so we can do that. Hopefully then we can keep them safe. What I do really want to do is have a look at the impacts actually in the lead backstop. It'd be interesting to see whether they've deformed or not, or whether they look like they're reusable like some of the other lead-free stuff. Kind of what I expected, to be honest. I was hoping that actually they might well surprise us, because we do need some decent alternatives. I mean, it's hard to be too critical of them because there's very few companies that are really doing much in the way of lead-free stuff, and of course they've spent a lot of time and presumably a fair bit of money to get these to market. I mean, they're certainly at the moment, these ones now don't look quite so good, so you've got to commend them for at least trying. But maybe 10 yards you might better hit something, but 25 with basically no breeze with a reasonable quality bit of kit, not great, unfortunately. Right, let's get these swapped over. Right, we've just spun ourselves around, so the cards are out of 45 yards now. I've tucked the GoPro further back out the way. If that had a sort of a biodegradable plastic outer to it, I'd quite happily use something that was in that sort of arrangement, you know, sort of a solid core with a material around the outside of it. But really, the back of my mind, how on earth can they say that these are environmentally friendly? They give us all this flack for leaving lead out in the environment, yet microplastics are an absolute biggest threat to our ecosystems and stuff over any lead will be. I'm telling you that much now. Obviously I'm not a scientist, but my point of view is that just randomly shooting bits of plastic into the outside, ridiculous idea. If you're in a range, fine, you can collect them up, no problem whatsoever, but to suggest that these are great for pest controlling and stuff like that when they're going to be just scattered all over the place in time, I don't know. Ethically, not really into it. Performance wise, I definitely think there's something to be looked at with this type of hybrid design, but let's see how they run out of 45 yards then. So I've just adjusted the focus. I'm using the 25 yard aim point, aiming sort of at the middle of the card. Right, 2 mil dots of drop. Well, we've got something of a group down there. I'll get all these cards in. There must be some inconsistencies in the way these are manufactured. Now, you would expect, given the technology available nowadays, that it'd be much easier to manufacture that plastic sheathing to pretty accurate tolerances. Of course, the little copper tips, maybe they're not pressed in fully. So when we get these back, we'll have a measure up. It's interesting that the pellet strikes, they've actually penetrated really quite deeply into that lead in the backstop there. A lot of the actual plastic sheaves have come away, so it's almost as if the copper's carried on travelling into the lead backstop itself. They've actually got some really quite defined holes in there, and a couple of them are in the bottom of that pellet catcher that look like they could probably go back through a rifle again. So what we'll probably do, we might even have a go at reshooting some of those another day. I think we'll keep all of the ones that are still intact, see if we can put some back together, but I think we need to do some further investigation. So I will see you at home. Right, we're back. Well, I got a bit more ranty about the plastic than I thought I would have done. If I've got it wrong and these are biodegradable, I will, well, to be honest, I would much rather be the one that's wrong. If they're not biodegradable, they need to be. If they are and I've got it wrong, I will amend the video and make sure everyone knows they are biodegradable. However, this is what really was impressive. The penetration of these. This is 6mm thick lead sheet. You can see them holes there. The actual tips have parted ways from the skirt section and punched clean through. Now, where we've got a bigger build-up of all the other pellets in the trap, you can see that the heads are fairly well stuck in. Now, a lot of these, you could probably pull these out with pliers. I've got a few here that I've managed to put back together already, so I'm going to put these back together. We're going to reuse these down the line for some ballistic gel testing. I would love to see on film in the ballistic gel that the tip actually separated from the skirt section and carried on, because it's really punched deeply into these. Unfortunately, they weren't as accurate as I was hoping they might be. Certainly to start with, those first couple of shots stacked next to each other for a freshly cleaned barrel, I was like, brilliant, they're going to work all right. But by the time I'd got about a dozen through, then the group started to open up a little bit, bringing it on to 0. Then we suddenly get a few bigger drops, and then towards the end of the 25-yard testing, there's 3/4 of an inch of elevation change here and just over an inch of a drop. So really, that's not humane even at this sort of range, unfortunately. I've had quite a good look over these now. The copper tips aren't well pushed into the mid sections. There's actually over 0.5 millimetre of difference between the ones that are left in the tin. You're definitely going to want to go and make sure that you push all the copper tips fully home into the mid section. That should hopefully tighten up some of the groups there. At 45 yards, the bulk of that group actually wasn't really too bad. That's under sort of an 1.5 inch group. We had these 3 massive flyers. Now, you can't realistically take a shot at something living when you may well get a flyer like that. That's just not acceptable at any range, really. We still got quite a lot of flyers at 25 yards, but if you can prep these and make sure that you don't get these flyers, that's actually not too bad, really. What is quite interesting is that they are obviously dropping less because of the lighter weight at that range. However, there's actually the same amount of wind drift here that a normal lead pellet would have in almost twice the wind. So there was barely a breath of wind on the day. The wind was running from right to left at under 2 miles an hour, and we have the same sort of drift from right to left as a lead pellet would give in sort of 4 to 6 mile an hour winds. So in calm conditions, if you need something that penetrates really hard, these may well be worth looking at. They certainly only just stayed subsonic. You could hear them crack on the way through. They were running at just under 1,000 feet per second through the sub 12 9015, which is pretty cool. Do I have a need for them to run that fast? No, not at all, really. Are they going to sway me away from my current lead pellets? Well, if there was a biodegradable version of these, and if it turns out these are biodegradable, then as I've mentioned, I'll change the video. We'll make sure everyone knows they are. But at the moment, the fact that these are plastic, there's absolutely no chance that I'm going to be using these around any of my farms. If I can collect them like I have done now, even so, the price of these compared to your traditional lead pellets, it's a real hard sell to swap over. These are £12 for 100, so that's basically the price of 500 fairly high-end lead pellets. So accuracy aside, I mean, that's not really humane. If you need something for shorter range work and you really do need some high penetration, these are definitely worth looking into. So you can see on the back of the skirt here that it's got fairly defined ridges in it now from the rifling. It was actually pulling off little fibres of the plastic, and that's what I'm pulling out here. It probably means that you're going to need to keep your barrel meticulously clean to keep these things accurate. Also, going forward, of course, if you're not running lead pellets through it, the lead does a pretty good job of keeping sort of rust down in your barrel, so you'll have to be far more meticulous keeping your barrel oiled if you're storing it for any period of time, cleaning it out before you use it for a session. So certainly more maintenance of your rifle is going to be involved if you were using these long term. Don't know really. I was hoping for better. They're not too bad. If I could have had groups this size out of 45 yards without these flyers, I think it probably would have been a slightly different outcome really. But yes, overall not too happy with these really, especially as these are what appears not to be biodegradable. If someone can come up with a decent sort of hybrid pellet like this that's got a steel core or something like that with a biodegradable outer sheath like this, if they're accurate, you could probably change the game and make a small fortune. So that'll do it for this one, guys, before I get too ranty about the plastic. So I will see you in the next one.